And good evening. It is Thursday, October 20th. My name is Ryan Belmore. I'm the owner and publisher of What's Up Noop, and we are having our conversations with the candidates. Frank, I don't know about you, but I'm starting to see that countdown in my sleep.
Oh, yeah, exactly. You know, I was thinking about the music. I said, I know that song.
I know that song means it's time to try to act like you have your stuff together. We've been doing these conversations with the candidates all month long, and while Frank shuts something off, we've been doing these all month long. We are talking with candidates as high as congressional district and all the way on the other end of the ballot in school committee. And we've been having multiple conversations per day. You can go on whatsupnoop.com. You can see our all of the interviews that we've already done. This is interview number 33. And we're also turning them into podcasts so you can listen, compare, contrast candidates. And how you find out who you're going to be voting for, you visit vote.ri.gov. You enter your home address, which will be your voting address, and you will can pull up a sample ballot. And I have the Newport ballot in front of me right here, and I could see the 35 different candidates all together that I'm going to have to choose from, and the 10 questions on the back of the ballot that I'm going to have to answer. So it's good to go on now. Vote.ri.gov. You can already vote, early vote at your local board of canvassers up until November 7th, and then election day is November 8th. Frank, did I miss anything there?
No, and just real important to get out there early and to get out there educated. If you know what you're voting for and you decide beforehand, it's a breeze to go in and out. And if you wait till election day, you don't know what the crowds are going to be like.
Well, and there's, for example, 7 candidates running for city council at large in Newport. How do you decide between the 7? You go on to whatsupnoop.com, you look at all the videos, you can compare and contrast what people think are the priorities.
Exactly.
We are staying in Newport today, Newport and Jamestown, which is Senate District 13, and he is Republican, David Quiroa. And let's see how I did there. David, how was my pronunciation?
You did fairly well.
Fairly well.
Good evening, everybody. Quiroa. How's that? Quiroa.
Quiroa. There you go.
There you go. David, you are running for Newport and Jamestown, Senate District 13. For those of us who do not know you, give us a little background of who you are professionally, personally, and tie in there, some interesting things about you, and wrap it up with why you chose to run for this seat.
Sure. Well, I was born in New York City, New York, Manhattan, back in 1971. Of the age of 1 month, I arrived to Newport. I lived right on Bellevue, so I had a Bellevue address for the first 9 months of my life. No longer have it, and I don't think no longer will, ever. But then I moved to Guatemala from age 1 to age 8, specifically in Guatemala City. My parents decided to move back then. And then the Civil War got a little tougher and tougher as the years went from late 70s to early 80s. So we decided to come back to the United States, and we went to Escondido, California, which is part of San Diego County. I lived there part of my childhood as well. And then when I turned 12, we returned back to Guatemala City. And then when I turned 17, 1989, I returned to the city of Newport. So from 1989 to this very moment that I'm speaking with you, I've been living here in Newport again. So that's a total of about 34 years that I've been a Newport resident. And I know for a lot of the Newport natives, I will never be a Newporter because you have to be born here, right?
Yes.
Yes. So, professionally, I had a career in the hospitality industry. Back in 1989, I actually started working as a dishwasher of the Black Pearl. But once the kitchen crew realized that I spoke English, of the Latino crew, I was like a runner. So all my other Latino counterparts used to be always angry at me because I never dishwashed. I was only, getting more chowder for the dining room, for the commoner's room in the back. And that was basically my main job when I was a teenager there. But then I progressed and moved up to the ladder all the way to being the food service director for the New York Yacht Club. I was in charge of special events. I was in charge of running all the bar and beverage, food and beverage for all the regattas. I managed around 80 employees, counting the temporary employees for every season. And then around age 33, which is, the time that you've been doing all these interviews now, I started a career in human services. I started working for the Department of Senior Services in the city of Cranston. I worked in the volunteer department, which was funded at the time by a federal program, part of AmeriCorps back then, and now it's called the Senior Corps, and it's called RSVP, Retired Senior Volunteer Program. I did that for about 12 years, and then there was a transition period taking place in the city of Cranston, and at the time, Mayor Fung appointed me interim director for the Department of Senior Services. It was supposed to be only to be for 6 months. I ended up doing it for 2 years. And then, a transition took over. We hired a permanent director. And then I stepped down I tested for the position of assistant director, which is the position I currently hold. However, right when COVID hit, our director retired. And then once again, Mayor Fung had me step up as interim director. And I basically led the whole emergency response for the senior population, not only of Cranston, but of the entire state in regards to the meal sites. We were producing 5,000 meals per week during that year and a half of COVID. And I was in charge of that for the city of Cranston and for most of the state, because OHA, Department of Health Aging, Office of Health Aging, is the one that funds the program. And we were catering to other 25 senior centers and adult daycares.
Awesome. Why did you decide to run for Senate District 13?
Well, I have very clear that the only way you can really make change is by getting involved civically. I mean, like I alluded before, I lived through the Guatemalan Civil War, and I know how it is, when you want to change things by force, it doesn't work. It's very violent, very sad, right? So the right way to do it is through civic work and being engaged in politics. And even if you don't win an elected office by you being engaged, you bring topics to the forefront that are going to do well and good for the rest of the community. And I really don't think that, to be honest with you, that the Democrats have been doing a good job at the national level, nor at the state level. A lot of the consequences that we're suffering now with the current economic situation is because of the policies that we see that the Democratic Party just pushes forward, especially over protecting climate. Climate is part of nature, that we cannot control in the immediacy. The economy we can. We created currency. So we have to really have a balance before we populate our beautiful bay with wind farms. We got to make sure that, that we do it in a responsible way, in a gradual way. So we need to first really work on our infrastructure, electric infrastructure, make sure that we're going to be ready to have those electric cars that we're going to be required to have, in the next 12 years. And the other thing is, if government is going to require us to have a $50,000 car, how are we, the middle class, supposed to afford such a vehicle when we cannot even fill our tanks currently right now? A gas, fluctuating between almost $4 to $5 to almost $6. It's not sustainable. So that's one of the reasons, I figured I needed to get involved, because it's important to have balance in politics, because it wouldn't be a good thing if we had 70 years of Republican rule. So I think right now we need to cool down the political heat and get some Republicans elected to have a more balance at the State House, politically speaking.
So David, you raise a lot of questions for me.
Sure.
And I want to understand what you mean by overprotecting the climate. You don't think that climate change is induced by what we do, by women?
Of course, it's going to be a factor, because we're adding, a pollution to the climate. But when the dinosaurs weren't around, we weren't really around, right? Industry wasn't around, and they disappeared. So nature has its forces, and we cannot really control nature. Nature's going to do its thing. Nature's going to be nature.
So my question isn't about nature, because I'll concede that certain things are cyclical, but there seems to be a great deal of evidence that the overuse of fossil fuels and some of those things are adding to significant climate change, the warming of the planet, the warming of the ocean, the rise in sea level. Those things, and all those things have a significant impact in Newport. So you don't think those things are adding to changes in the climate?
Well, they're adding, but they're not the main factor. I don't think. And you have to remember that science is only almost like a picture in time. In other words, whatever is validated by science today is only going to be as good till the next theory comes and knocks that one out when we have more evidence. So science is really a science that it's alive. It's always feeding from new information. So whatever we think that is a fact now, it may be totally erroneous tomorrow. But of course, we have to control fossil fuels, but we cannot go green by taking the green in monetary wise from everybody and not being able to have an economy that is going to sustain the middle class. We need to really think of how are we going to grow our economy by not only saying, okay, we're going to grow jobs, but at the same time, not put government in place to put regulations and protect the middle class to be able to have affordable housing, affordable apartments, affordable homes. Because if you're barista, if you're CNA, if you're LPN, if you're nurse practitioner, cannot afford a home, then how do you expect them to come and work in an industries? Because we can expand economies, we can create all the jobs we want. But if we don't have them, for them where to live, then it's not going to work because they're not going to come. That's why when you go to many restaurants now, you try to go buy a coffee, you can't enter the actual restaurant. You have to go around through the drive-thru because they'll have a sign up saying, sorry, we don't have enough staff to open the dining room today.
David, when you were going through your backgrounds, which I enjoyed getting to know, for a while there, I would be like, if just meeting you and not knowing, seeing the ballot, I'd be like, oh, this guy's got to be a Democrat. And then you got to some other parts. What drew you to become a Republican? What principles of the Republican Party do you most align with?
Well, I'm Catholic. I'm deeply pro-life. I'm very religious. Growing up in Guatemala, it's a culture that is really conservative. A lot of the family values, family unit. For example, people would ask me, when I was growing up or when I came back to the U.S. as a teenager, people would ask me, hey, David, do they have Thanksgiving in Guatemala? I'm like, yes, they do. Every Saturday, every Saturday we have Thanksgiving. Families get together. There's meals all over the place. Even if you already are full, if you already just ate, you still got to eat more because, it'd be rude if you don't. So it's always like a family celebration. Having said that, though, I'm pretty moderate in the sense that when I ran the first time for state rep, at the time we were having the discussion of marriage equality. I, again, was the Republican candidate, and my opponent then, Russell Jackson, was the Democrat candidate. He was against marriage equality, gay marriage. I was for it, for example. So there you had an interesting contrast. The Republican was for it, the Democrat wasn't, So I'm someone that appeals to me of the Republican Party, where you enter a party and be yourself and say what you're really thinking without fear that you have to be part of the group. Because that's one quality I think that has helped me through all my entire life, where I always try to run my own show and I try to always be my own man. Having said that, of course, we can come to consensus. But one of the reasons, for example, I voted for Donald Trump when he ran for president is because I found him very appealing because he was really, saying what he really meant and was very clear about it, and not having all these politicians always come to you, smile to you, overpromise, and then do not keep those promises or deliver for you. See, that's really, we need to end that. We need politicians that are going to really keep their promises. And on that note, I think that something that I would really try to push if I was blessed with getting elected is term limits. I think that both senators and reps should have 8 years, and that's it, 4 terms, to go par with the general officers. Because once you start to get used to being in a cushy seat in either the rep side or the Senate side, you start to lose that independence and you start to lose the goodwill of really helping the people, and you start to forget where you came from, because more power will just corrupt you. So term limits are very important.
So David, about 3,000 questions from that, but I'll ask one. There's been a lot that's gone on with Donald Trump since he ran, and multitude of items. Do you still support Donald Trump, and do you still think that what you're hearing from him is the truth?
Well, to be really honest with you, I think that what they've done with him, the majority of the stuff they have come up, is really unfair, and the unit of measure is not the same. When Hillary Clinton was going through her, scandal of her emails, having a government server in her basement, the law wasn't really applied to her like it's being applied to Donald Trump now.
But there's a vast David, there's a vast difference here. Donald Trump was president of the United States, and he took up approximately 11,000 records with him to Mar-a-Lago. Some of them classified records to Mar-a-Lago after he left the presidency.
Okay.
That's not an equivalent. You see that as okay?
Oh no, you're right. It's not an equivalent because it's not as bad as what Hillary Clinton did. She had thousands of emails with confidential electronic information that could have been taken from those servers.
It was investigated. It was investigated by the Republicans, and there was no charges.
But excuse me 1 second, friend, please. Donald Trump was president, right? So he's seen this information. He knows this information. He has digested this information. So it's not like he's a Russian spy looking at a bunch of documents and he took them home, or a low-level staffer or a cabinet member for that matter. At the time that he took that information, he was the president of the United States that got voted in. So it's not like he's looking through some information that he didn't have the clearance to look at, or even have the capacity, the capability to declassify too,
David, I want to bring it back to a quick but first, I forgot to ask earlier, and I want to do a quick 2 questions here. I know you've run for office a couple of times. Have you held office before?
No.
Okay.
Never.
I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss anything there. When it comes back to Senate District 13, if you're elected, how do you plan to make life better, easier, more affordable for the voters in Senate District 13?
Well, as I go out and knock on the doors, I notice that there's a lot of homes that are dark. There's nobody there, and according to the voter list, somebody should be living there. So most likely those homes are part of the Airbnb network, and I think that's one area that we need to really strengthen. The enforcement piece of it. I know that there's a registry here, at least in Newport locally, but there's really no enforcement arm. So one of the things I would love to do is maybe empower the AG's office or the state police, or have some kind of entity that will be the enforcement arm for the entire state, not just the local communities, to make sure that people that are in violation of, renting these homes and converting them basically in little mini hotels, that they can be taken by eminent domain by government to then be turned into affordable housing for the middle class that needs a house to live in, for example. I think that's an area where government should step in and ensure that our working families and their kids are going to have a roof over their head, but it has to be a field that is going to be a fair playing field, not a field where only the uber rich and the wealthy are able to own homes in this beautiful town, and then leaving slowly, crushing the middle class to have to move out to New Bedford, Fall River, and totally not only leave Newport, but leave the state entirely. I don't think that's fair, for example. The other thing,
short-term rentals should be banned?
Not banned, but regulated, and have that enforcement arm, because right now, you can have an Airbnb if you want to do it, but if the owner lives in the dwelling. But a lot of these homes, the owner is not living there. They're literally a standalone Airbnb, which is not legal right now. And for people that are doing that, even if they're getting fined, but they're making so much money that they are able to afford the fine. Well, I think that there should be a system where if you're a repeat offender, then the state should step in and take that property with eminent domain powers and put it back on the market so a working family can buy it, for example.
But do you have a concept of how many units there are that fall into that category?
Well, I mean, I didn't do a census of them, I'm not sure, but once, if I'm elected, then we can do a formal study from the state and figure it out, and come up with plans and mechanisms of how we would be able to secure, more affordable housing. And that's only one example. But then, we also have to look at what zoning is available throughout the state where we can, allow more construction to be built and the existing plots that have homes in them. If there's enough space, maybe there can be variances that can be allowed so we can build more houses, like in-law apartments, for example.
So that was, that the legislature passed that in this past session that allowed for those kinds. I forget exactly what the terminology was. What has to happen? They passed enabling legislation, and the communities then have to be able to then do their part. But it was passed by the legislature.
Well, it would be a matter to revise it and see if it was enough. The other issue that I see is policing. I want to see a revamped municipal police academy to train not only municipal police officers, but also state police and first responders, the EMAs. So I think we should be the model for the country, build a brand new training academy for our police force, where, police, fire, emergency response teams can train together and also have, special classes and teach police officers to deal in crisis situations, because I think that we need that now. I was talking to some police officers and they were telling me that the Municipal Police Academy currently share space with CCRI. So it's not like they even have their own classrooms, if you will.
Frank? I want to go back to understand what your position would be in Rhode Island relative to immigration. If in fact what happened with in New York and in other areas where certain governors flew immigrants into the community, is that something that you would support?
Well, you know what's funny about that? In the case of Rhode Island, and particularly Quinnipiac Island, we don't need governors people because people are coming here naturally. Because since 1989 to today, there's been so many families that have migrated from this area of Guatemala called Palencia, where now I think, if I'm not mistaken, we have about 400 children in the school system now that are non-English speakers that are learning now English.
That's in Newport?
That's in Newport, yes. And that's one of my other issues that I have. I think that at the state level, we need to really look at the funding formula for schools, because it's very important that we support our schools the proper way. Number one, we need to expand and ensure that the schools have mental health professionals available for our children, all our children. But going back to the asylum children, the immigrant children, it's not fair for the native students, the current teachers, to be trying to educate all these other children that don't necessarily speak English without the proper support. We have to educate the children. We're mandated to educate the children. Of course, I'm not saying we don't do that. We have to do that. But I think that we tend to always neglect the job, the extraordinary work that our teachers are doing. I mean, they're doing everything they can, but we need to also at the state level ensure that we have the correct funding for our school systems so the homeowners are not left with the cost of those English learner students that is almost twice as much as a regular pupil. So we need to really look at that. And so I don't think we need any governor to be sending us anyone, because there's already a natural stream that every weekend, I hear of new families that are arriving.
David, you brought up schools, so I'm wondering, in Newport, at least, not Jamestown, there will be a question on the ballot about regional school district. Where do you come on down on that question in regards to approving or rejecting it?
I think that anytime you can take advantage of economies of scale is the right thing to do. However, I would approve it. You know, if I'm a voter too, so I'm going to vote to approve. But I don't think that Middletown is going to be ready to merge with us just because of the fact that I just told you. The Newport school system is overrun right now, and it has a big burden with English learning students. And I don't think, you know, it's really a class issue, right? A socioeconomic issue. It's not so much that, you know, the Middletown folks don't want to mix their kids with the Latino kids. I really don't believe it's that. It's more of a socioeconomic issue. In other words, they don't want to have their kids be dragged down in a classroom where some of these students, you know, don't really know what's going on because they don't speak the language. So how do you fix that? I'm not sure. But I think being fair to them, I don't think they're going to approve it. Does it make sense to have a unified system? Absolutely, because then you have the gains of economies of scale.
I'm going to stay on the ballot for 1 second, Frank, while I'm
That's
there.
fine. Sure.
That's question number 5. Question number 4 is cannabis. Where do you come down with the cannabis discussion? The Rhode Island General Assembly pushed it down to the cities and towns, saying each city and town can approve whether to have it in their community or not. What do you think is the best thing for Jamestown and Newport?
I think if it's going to generate revenue and it's going to help, take off the tax burden of the residents, I think it's a good thing to have that revenue come into Newport and Jamestown. They're going to New Bedford, Fall River. They're going to Massachusetts, right? Unless they have the medical card. So now that it's going to be recreational as well, then I think it's an almost no-brainer, if you will. Now, you have the social question, the issues. Where is it going to go? Where is it going to be? Well, I think that there's a little bit of a moral hypocrisy, because how many liquor stores do we have all over the place? You know what I mean?
I wanted to switch to one other quick topic. A few years ago, Newport suffered a considerable outage, blackout, if you will, in which there were in the middle of winter, a serious situation with the utilities. Have you taken a look at that, and do you think that enough has been done to remedy that situation? And if not, what needs to happen?
Yeah, Frank, you're right. I remember I froze my butt because I was designated in the family to stay here. The rest of my family went to the Marriott Hotel. I was the one that stayed behind to watch the house. So yes, and that's the main reason I'm telling you. We have to have responsible policies when we talk about climate change in trying to eliminate the current system of energy that we have, because our infrastructure is really not there right now. You're talking specifically about the gas, but also electricity. Right. How can we, be expected to everyone own an electric car when our grid is not ready for that? I really don't know how that's going to take place, because Rhode Island is Rhode Island. There's no way our infrastructure is going to be ready in 10 years. Maybe it should. In fact, it should, because one little minor fact, little trivia fact, the budget of the state of Rhode Island is the exact same budget of the country of Guatemala, which 24 million people, 1 million people. You figure it out. So we really need to look at state government. One of the things that I also want to do if I get in is start, checking or doing a study where we can eliminate duplication. We really need to do this. For example, RIPTA. RIPTA, we have a major issue there right now because we don't have enough drivers. When routes are eliminated, the two groups of people that suffer the most are going to be your senior population and your students. Your seniors depend, especially in the Metro Cone, they depend on the public transportation to go to their doctor's appointments, to go to their meal sites, to go, visit their family and friends for entertainment. This is really important, and we need to look at those type of agencies. If they're top heavy and top management, well, we need to start eliminating the supervisor, the supervisor, the supervisor, the supervisor. We really need to look at those institutions. If we have to totally abolish them and put new ones, then that's what we need to do. It's a shame. We're such a small state that our public transportation system should be a model for the entire country.
David, if you look at the numbers in Senate District 13, you need the independents to come your way. You need some Democrats to come your way, most likely. You obviously have your passionate thoughts on a lot of issues. How do you plan, if you get elected, to still represent, to put your own thoughts aside on, let's just go with pro-life versus pro-choice. How do you best represent your constituents? If the majority of them want something that you or the Republican Party don't believe in?
Well, how would that work if I get elected? That means the majority wants what I want, or wants like.
Well, that means the majority of voters. I guess the majority. It's not the majority of residents versus majority of voters. Yeah, I guess you get me on a technical there, but.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, let's say, what would I do with the vast amount of folks that didn't vote for me? Well, what you do is you listen to them. If I do get elected, I'm not stopping. Knocking on doors. I'm going to have town hall meetings. I'm going to have my webpage where I'm going to ask for what is it that people want to change. But for example, with the abortion issue, I mean, I am pro-life, but the one of the discussions that they have right now is that the state workers supposedly don't have access to abortion. Yes, they do. In the case of incest and rape, they do have access to that. Making me think they don't, but they do. But other than that issue, I think any issue could be brought to the table and could be worked on. But I hope that if I do get elected, I'm going to be trying to, represent the district with honor and equity.
David, one of the criticisms of Republicans, and I've been surprised I haven't heard more about it lately, is that they talk about being pro-life, but they're really pro-birth. And it's a question of what happens afterwards. That family or that individual who feels that they aren't adequate to bring up a child, they don't have the means to do that. They are programs are the Republicans have consistently voted against programs that would provide some kind of help or support, including child care, which is incredibly expensive, to allow for people to have the means to bring up that child in a better environment.
I'm center right. Okay, so when it comes to family and supporting families, I have a soft spot in my heart for that, because my wife and I brought up. I've been blessed with the fact that I have always made just enough money not to qualify for any assistance. You know what I mean? Which sometimes is frustrating. But I see that, if you're a single parent and you have two, three children, I think that it's really a duty of society to help those families to become successful and ensure that those children have a roof over their head and have nutrition and have the opportunity to an education. I think that's really something that as a society, it's not partisan. I mean, that's what we should do, period, as good Americans.
David, wondering, obviously in Newport, we have a gubernatorial candidate running as a Republican. There are some other Republicans running for other seats. Any discussions with them? Any going door to door with them? Has the Republican Party for the state taken you in?
Helping, they've given us some trainings and stuff. And I go to the trainings, I go to the sessions, then I do my own thing. For example, I have 5 seasons of video segment Facebook page. I do videos that some of them are a little lighthearted, they're a little funny, and some of them are very serious. But I'm trying to get my message out to the voters. I have about 25 short, segments where I, present the issues and the solutions that I'm bring to the table. I do get elected.
This is a good time to, before I forget, promote where people can find your website, your Facebook page, contact info, things like that.
You're prepared.
And I'm just going to read it. Quiroa4ri.com. And he just wants to see how many times I can say his last name. David Quiroa at Quiroa4ri.com, or Quiroa for State Senate, Rhode Island District 13 on Facebook. And the reason I'm reading it is because some people will listen to the podcast. So I want to make sure that they catch it. David, was there any other topics that we did not get to today that you wanted to bring up?
Well, I think that we really need to look at our fishing industry. I hear, knocking on doors. I happened to speak with a couple of fishermen, and they were telling me that they're really scared and they're having a hard time catching fish, So I think that that's also another area where we need to be careful with how we treat climate change, or what are the that we want to do by creating a bunch of wind farms in the ocean, because we're going to disturb marine life. What impact is that going to have to our fisheries? You know what I mean? What impact is that going to have, if we knock down a bunch of trees just to put some, So we have, there's got to be a balance. So I don't think we're ready to have electric cars, in 2032. I love the Teslas. They look really cool, but I'm driving my 2007 Kia Sportage, when I'm driving.
Excellent. Did you say earlier 5 kids?
Yes. And Carlo, he's 19. He qualified for the Naval Nuclear Program, graduated in April out of boot camp. He's coming to Noro. He finalized his first stretch of training. He's now a petty officer with 4 stripes, 4 now. So we're very proud of him. We're a Navy family now officially, with son Giancarlo. David Jr., who ran with me 4 years ago against Amnesty, because my son doesn't like Trump and I like Trump anyways. So he ran as an independent, I ran as a Republican. And then we have Andre, who's graduating from URI in December, IT security, information technology. And then I have Giancarlo, who I just mentioned. He's the 3rd boy. Then I have Sophia, who goes to Rogers. And then I have Bella, who goes to the med school.
Excellent. You have your hands full.
Yeah. They all going to run for office?
Yeah. He wants to get out of the house.
Quiroa family. So,
David, do you and I hope this isn't pushing it too far, but do you consider your family you live in the American dream?
I think we are. We really are, because looking back to my days in Guatemala, there were times, especially during the Civil War in the early 80s, where all we had to eat for months was rice and beans, for breakfast, for lunch, and dinner. But the way we looked at it back then was we were in heaven because we had food. We weren't going hungry. Unlike some kids in Haiti who eat cookies made out of clay. So they eat dirt, literally. That's so sad. So from that perspective, coming back here to the U.S., although now it's even harder to buy chicken wings, because the bag of wings that used to cost you at BJ's $14.99 now is like $38. It's insane. So we can't afford even wings now. So it's kind of getting scary. But I think that overall, if we really make an effort, and if we really give a chance to have new people come into government to try to do things a little better, instead of hitting our heads against the wall over and over and expecting a different result, it's time to elect some Republicans and put some change in the State House.
That is a great place to end. And I want to thank you for taking the time to sit down with us this evening. And we wish you the very best of luck over the next couple of weeks.
Thank you, Frank. I appreciate
Thank
it.
You, David. We appreciate it. And good luck in the campaign. And afterwards, you've got a great story to tell. And I'm impressed with how you've been able to bring up a family after you've gone back and forth and facing some of those hardships you did. You're obviously a hard worker, and in a lot of ways to be admired for what you do.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
All right, David. Thank you so much. And again, it is David Quiroa, and he is Senate District 13, and he is the Republican on the ballot in all of Jamestown, and then the majority of Newport as well. And visit vote.ri.gov. You can see all of the candidates that you'll be voting for. And also, if you want to watch this again, want to share it with anybody, want to watch other candidate interviews or listen to them, all available on whatsupnuke.com. Good night, Frank.
Good to be with you, Ryan. And just lots of contrast. Watch both this one and Dawn Oyer. You see the contrast between the candidates.
Excellent. And you can also listen to them, all available on whatsupnuke.com, as well as our earlier today, we were in Congressional District 1 with David Cicilline. We were in Portsmouth. We have Secretary of State, General Treasurer candidates. We have them all. So all available on whatsupneep.com. And we hope you enjoy them. Thanks for watching.